guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to TacticalBassin. Today we are talking shallow water. We're talking pre-spawn, going into the spawn. And here's the deal. The reason why I want to talk about this is obviously you know what to do when the fish are on beds. We've talked about that a ton already this year. We've talked about it previously. But even during the spawn, there are a lot of fish that haven't spawned yet, and there's a lot of fish that are already done. So even during the spawn, you don't have to fish for sight fish. There are a ton of other options. So what I want to talk to you about is just shallow fishing. What do you do when those fish move up really, really shallow and they're not actually on beds? Or what do you do if they move shallow and you don't want to target the ones that are on beds? Here are some baits and some tricks that I've found to get those fish. I'm going to wrap up with probably my very best tip for you, but we're going to run through some of my favorite baits. But the concept behind it is the fish are dirt shallow. So rule of thumb is you want baits that get, if you're slow fishing, an ultra slow fall. That's the biggest thing. And even if you're power fishing, it's still the same thing. Let's start with the power, the reaction baits. Early or late in the day, if those fish are up dirt shallow, I will start out trying to throw a spinnerbait, trying to get that reaction bite. But the key to that shallow water, and we're talking shallow, let's say 5 foot or less, and these same rules apply in a foot or less, because in some places they get really shallow. I was running into fish last week. I had the boat literally bellied in the mud, and I was throwing up onto a flat in 6 to 8 inches of water, and the fish would have to wake. The fish were in that shallow water that when they moved, they created a wake to come and get the bait. So early and late in the day, the spinnerbait works really well for me, but you want to go lightweight. You want to go like 3/8 to 1/4 ounce, really, really light. And then basically the most important thing then is it comes down to blade size. So like the bling, one of our favorites, and a 1/4 ounce, I can just slow roll that thing up in that shallow water and those fish just come plow it. But as you start getting higher light, that becomes less effective because the fish can get a better look at it. So then you go to something like this little guy. This is a little Demiki, but super thin, flowy skirt, tiny blades. I mean, look at the blade size difference. And the bling is not a big spinnerbait. Keep that in mind. Tiny little blade. The advantage here is that in the exact same situation, I can go much faster because the blade is not cupping so much water. I can really speed it up without coming up to the surface and blowing out. So I can change my speed and I can get those fish to react to a faster moving bait even as that light is getting higher. So that's a tip that will make a big difference for you in the shallows. Adjust that blade size or the bait that you're throwing. That wispier, faster moving bait will catch fish later into the day if you've got some clarity up there in that shallow water. Next, topwater. You would think that I'd be talking morning and evening, but I'm not. I'm talking all day long. Throw topwater, especially if there are bait fish present. We just went over this in a video the other day. It's a huge factor. It gets bit. A bait like this, the little bubble walker, it's a true popper, but I can also get a perfect walk the dog action out of it. It's great for both. It's a big enough, bulky enough popper to get big bites, but it's small enough and I can fish it subtle to get those bites when the fish are wary. But don't be afraid to throw it in the middle of the day, hottest part of the afternoon when the water is the warmest, and you will get big bites when you are not expecting them. Number 3 is going to be a square bill crankbait. Why a square bill? Very, very simple. One, they bounce off cover extremely well. That squared off bill just deflects really well because you don't want to get snagged way up in those shallows, because if you go in there to get your bait back, you're going to blow it all out. You're going to drive all the fish out of the shallows. So a square bill is a bait that will deflect really well, and if you start to hang up, you can pause it. Or if you hit bottom, you can pause it and they'll float back out. They dig, but if you stop them, they immediately float up and back away from the cover. It's fantastic. I mean, they're truly, literally built for shallow water fishing. And then you can really fine tune it. There's obviously a bunch of companies that build square bills. You already know some of our favorites, but for those dirt shallow applications, a couple that I've been playing with that I'm really happy with, the little tiny biggie, the small version, that little guy gets them and it will run shallow. The little Sixth Sense, that little guy runs really shallow. Lucky Craft 1.5 runs really shallow. And then this guy is one that I started playing with this year. The Rapala or Rapala, they're Brat. And their name is like a mile long, but essentially it's the Brat. That's what this little guy is. That one runs dirt shallow. And these are small baits, but they get big bites. You want to fish them aggressive, burn them, stop them, pop them. If they hit cover, rip them out. Let them float up and then pop them. It'll just get those core reaction bites out of those fish. But again, a square bill, you can cover a ton of water, but you can be aggressive with it. Burn, stop, bump a piece of cover, wait, burn. Super aggressive and get those key bites where they don't want to lash out, but it just grabs at their core and they have to lash out. And then last, let's talk about slow fishing. I mean, how can you talk about shallow water without talking about a Senko, right? You have to. The value of a Senko is that ultra slow fall. We know in deep water that the way that a bait falls is key. It's deadly. So why would it be any different in shallow water, right? Even though it's only got this far to fall or this far to fall, getting that slow, natural fall gives those fish time to spot it, to come inspect it, and it looks good, and they eat it. The Senko, a little 5-inch Senko, is probably nationally the #1 shallow water bait that there is. I mean, #1, just across the board. Any watercolor, because they come in a variety of colors. You can throw some of these natural shad colors in that crystal clear water, wacky rig them on a little tiny hook, all the way up to throwing black and blue or black and red or June bug on a big Superline EWG 3/0 hook. For match any watercolor, match any size fish in any cover with a Senko. Now here's 2 more tips for you. 2 profiles that are completely different. One is this little guy, a flick shake worm. I'm not gonna tell you to throw this on a shaky head or who knows. You could rig it any which way. You could Texas rig it, but here's what I'm gonna tell you. If you put this guy on a wacky rig, let me get a Senko out too. This is a 5-inch Senko. This is a 5.8 flick shake. You see how it's got that weird shape? That's not from laying in the package. That is the shape. They actually build it with some shape to it. But if a Senko falls at this speed, and I'm just making this up, but I'm just gonna give you a point of reference. If a Senko falls at this speed through the water column, a flick shake on the exact same wacky hook, put them both on either a 1 or a 1/0 wacky hook, it's going to fall. This one's going like this one's gonna fall like this. Super slow, but still great movement out of the bait itself. It just hangs in the water longer. So the shallower you get, if you're in 3, 4, 5 feet of water, a Senko is fantastic. But if you're in 1 to 2 feet of water and you want that bait to land and just hang up there and just slow fall in front of those fish and trigger that core reaction, a flick shake worm will get bit where a Senko will not. Remember that. And then last but not least, another Yamamoto bait that is often overlooked is an Ika. Goofy looking little bait. Goofy looking bait. But it's a great shallow water bait and it's a great cover bait. Wonderful around docks, up around tules and grass edges. But you don't rig it the way that you would think you'd rig this. You think you'd take this guy just like this, so like a jig, right? It's got the tails out in the back, but you don't. You turn that guy over and you Texas rig this thing on a big hook, on a 4/0 hook. Let me get this rigged up for you. Just like that. Goofy looking bait. Line tie's coming out here, but you pitch that bugger out in the water and it just falls out away from the boat, and then it lands and you just hop it up. It's Senko fishing. Just hop it up and let it fall again. But it falls away from you. It will, when it lands in the water, it wants to swim back away. So if you throw it up along a dock, it can swim up underneath there. But it's still just that unique, almost a Senko fall. It's like a cross between a Senko and a big Ned rig. But it catches them. If you're on a lake where tons of people are throwing a Senko, pick up a flick shake, pick up an Ica, do something a little bit different, and it'll surprise you. Do you remember when the Senko first came out? It was like there wasn't a bass in the lake that wouldn't just swim over and eat that thing. Well, if you're the only guy throwing that Ica, or the only guy throwing that ultra slow falling flick shake, it's the same thing. I hope that helps you guys. You've got a bunch of time left to be up there fishing that ultra shallow water. You can do this now all the way into summer. Some of you guys are still under ice. You can do it almost all the way to fall. There's tons of time to experiment with this style of fishing, whether you want to throw reaction, whether you want to throw topwater, or you want to slow fish and catch those fish that won't eat anything else. These baits are going to do it. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon.